Welcome back to the Movement Professional Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Leib. Today I'm excited to welcome back a returning guest, Dr. Asare Christian, founder of Aether Medicine. Dr. Christian is a leader in interventional pain management and functional medicine, and today we're diving into one of the cutting-edge tools he's using to evaluate patient care, the PNOE metabolic analysis system. In this episode, we'll explore how PNOE works, what makes it unique, and how it's helping providers like Dr. Christian create a more personalized, data-driven treatment plans. From optimizing performance to supporting recovery and long-term health, Dr. Christian and PNOE are changing the game. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to the Movement Professional Podcast. I'm joined again by Dr. Asare Christian of Aether Medicine. It's good to have you back on, Asare.
It is great to be back. Good to see you, my man. Yes.
So I'll let Dr. Christian do another brief intro for what his practice offers. To me, I think it's such a unique healthcare practice for what he's doing, and we speak, I think, the same language in what you're doing as a physician and what I'm doing as a movement professional. And I don't often find that with physicians, so I really cherish that relationship, the relationship that we're continuing to build. Today, what I really want to talk about, I had the opportunity to be a patient and use a new system that Dr. Christian has called the PNOE system. I got some information like my VO2 max, my resting metabolic rate, and also just a lot of information about how I hold my posture, how I breathe while I'm exercising. It was very, very fascinating and really just made me think about some things. And I'm always thinking about this stuff anyway, but it really gave me a nice indication of some things that I could prioritize. So what drew you to this new implement, this PNOE system, and how do you think it aligns with your overall approach to patient care?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Chris, thanks for having me. I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Asare Christian and the founder of Aether Medicine. And Aether Medicine is an integrative medical practice in Wayne, Philadelphia, where we focus on cellular health as a way to address pain, improve performance, and health span. And basically, we focus on health as a way to solve pain, because when you're healthy, then everything works a lot better. But specifically for this discussion and the PNOE system, so one of the things, and I think, Chris, we've had these discussions before where we talk about trying to improve outcomes in healthcare, trying to improve experience for individuals. And it became, you can manage what you can measure, right? So there's all of these interventions that we do, and how do we really measure it? So that's something that I've always been interested in and still continue to find different lenses, because PNOE is actually one lens that I'm using, but I'm also using other systems that give additional information that may be lacking in PNOE. But the whole idea of bringing PNOE in was really getting to the core of improving performance, improving overall health, which is metabolic health. It's about how, your cells takes in energy, use that energy, whether it's fatty acid, whether it's glucose, whether it's, protein, whatever amino acid, we don't want to use that, to make energy and make energy efficiently to supply the whole system. So PNOE was a system that looks at that metabolic category of information, from how oxygen is taken through the nose, into the lungs, into the heart pumps that up through the blood, and then it gets into your muscle, and then the muscle gets into the cell, the mitochondria. So it's looking at all this oxygen chain and looking at places where you can find deficit, because some people may be good at they may have good mitochondria, but they're not getting oxygen to the place. Or they may have oxygen to the place, but they don't have enough mitochondria to use it. So this was a way for us to be able to track the whole process of how we make energy, and then trying to find deficit and try to help people navigate. And there's more to it, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. Yeah,
I love it. And I've been thinking more and more too on my side of things about, just how much the overall organism matters so much more than the specifics of the diagnoses that I see. And it's just because I've had more opportunity to work with people longer than I did when I was, first in a busier clinic and therapy that was very episodic, where if you saw someone for 6 months, it was a long time. And you don't really get to see sort of the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows. And one of the things that just becomes very clear is if somebody's got an injury, how they recover is how's their immune system functioning? How are their systems functioning as a whole? And that's not something that you can build in 6 months. That's something that you have to look at very holistically and help someone over the course of their lives. So just trying to, sort of get out of that specialization type of piece where we're like really kind of
Yeah.
over focusing maybe on some things to try to be really specific and backing up and saying like, how do we just make energy? How do we use energy? And then that I think takes us into some
Yeah.
other questions about like how our systems are working as a whole. So from an exercise standpoint, that sort of looks more like I need to know what your general aerobic fitness is more so
Yeah.
than I need to know the state of your joint.
Yeah.
And looking at it more that way. And the people whose fitness from an aerobic standpoint is better will do better from a pain perspective, regardless
Mhm.
of the state of their joint generally.
Absolutely.
So and trying to prioritize the system as a whole more so than the specific that is now the symptom that someone's actually complaining about, but it was way more than that the whole time.
Yeah, and you just nail it, with that example of, saying that, if you have improved aerobic capacity, yes, because at the base of it, it's a function of a cell. When there's a pathology, it's a function of a cell that has become dysregulated, right?
Right.
And how you restore that in a simplistic way is all about energy of the cell. If the
Right.
cells have energy, then they're going to adapt in a healthy way. Your cells is always adapting. So when energy is not there or not made efficiently, it down regulates, because when you're creating energy, you're also creating waste. So definitely aerobic capacity, and as we know, for athletes and other people, super super important for overall health of the cell. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's some of the information that's being generated in this PNOE system. I know like VO2 max gets thrown around there. So there's
Yeah.
different ways to measure it. There's different ways to estimate it. This seems to be a very accurate way to get some good information on that. And that's just one piece of the puzzle, but it definitely gives you some good information. There's some data on longevity, and having a higher VO2 max tends to
Yes.
correspond to living longer and living healthier and more functional. So there's pieces there that I look at these numbers that can become different vital signs than we tend to use. We look at like blood pressure a
Sure.
lot, and
Yeah.
even like resting heart rate. These are all important things. Cholesterol, all important things, but
Hypertension. Yeah.
we don't have these behavioral vital signs. And I think the cardiovascular health numbers should start looking at some of the things that indicate fitness more than sickness. And this seems to be what you're kind of barking at here with this type of work.
Absolutely, because it's all about trying to solve health.
Mm.
And traditionally, and as you know, through resonance and the things we learn, we are focusing on sickness. So some of these vital signs that we even do, it's kind of measuring really sickness. It's not really looking at, yeah, people may have high blood pressure. People can sit here and have normal vitals and has horrible VO2 max,
Right.
which, predict how long and how well you're going to live. So definitely there is layers and there's levels of measurements. And I think VO2 max, as everybody knows, is one of the good metrics that we can look at for overall cardiorespiratory health. And if you have that right, it's all ABC, right? Airway.
Right.
Yep. So that's it. And that if that's correct, then everything else works a lot better.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So what have you been using some of the data that you're generating from this PNOE system? How have you been using that in your treatment plans, connecting that to, your pain management, rehab, everything that you're already doing in your clinic?
Yeah, so PNOE gives you a lot of information. So it's not just, it's doing breath analysis and it's going to give you VO2 max.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on that, it also translate to biological age because there are some connections there. And then it also gives you data on your resting metabolic rate, fat burning efficiency, how efficient are you using fatty acid versus glucose as energy source. It looks at recovery capacity. It looks at efficiency of training, movement, efficiency, all of this data that really influence movement and overall health. So when it comes to what I do now, where in this practice now we are focusing on metabolic health, weight management. One of the biggest things, if people are trying to lose weight, if you don't even understand your resting metabolic rate, you're not going to do it right, because
Right.
your body requires specific energy at baseline to be able to do what it needs to do. Of course, caloric deficit is what creates, weight loss or whatever. But even with that, if people are not getting enough or close to their baseline, sometimes people are so caloric deficit that the whole system is not working.
Right.
So getting specific on resting metabolic rate is super important. Some people may have a low, some people may have a high. All of that is important to predict, even in terms of macronutrients, how much carbohydrates, how much fat, how much protein you need if you're trying to lose weight. if you're trying to improve performance, or if you're trying to live longer. So all of those goals also have specific targets, which PNOE kind of breaks down for you. Because one of the things that we all know, everybody knows nutrition is important. Everybody knows exercise is important. Everybody knows all of these things are important. But how do we get to the right dosing, the right timing for a particular person with a particular goal? So PNOE gives us all of that information of micronutrients, and then it also breaks down, exercise types for your goals. And you'll talk about cardiovascular, resistance training, endurance based on your goals. So if your VO2 mass is low, then we got to prescribe a specific type of exercise for you. If you're not metabolically flexible, then we got to get you to build some more muscles to be able to do all of those things. So it's a very precise way to get information that influence performance. And then fundamentally, even when it comes to pain, people that have pain is a metabolic dysregulation. So you have immune cells that are propagating the pain. You have neuroplasticity. All of that is a function of a cell. And when all of those cells have the right energy and the right signal, they all tend to adapt in a healthy way. So having a more precise way has been really helpful. It's also kind of one of the things I also like about this is habits. So I've done this, and we all know this, right? We all know what we're supposed to do, where you do this test, and then it gives you a specific metric that you kind of learn, like, oh my gosh, I know where this is coming from. This is this habit, right? You're not taking in oxygen as well. I don't do cardio. It just tells me, like, man, I got to do my cardio. So it's a very true way to kind of get you to kind of step back and say, okay, I know these things that I don't do are actually showing up here. And then when people do them, they see the difference. And actually, I've had two individuals who've just blown me away. One of them, a jiu-jitsu guy, and some other guy also very healthy. Came in, biological age was low. We went back, and he was somebody who was actually very fit. He has a good VO2 max, because he's a fighter. And then he was not metabolically flexible, so something was up. And then by talking to him, I came to find out that he was eating late because of his training, right? So this is somebody who is doing one thing right, and we saw that on the VO2 max is great, but yet he's not using, glucose appropriately compared to fatty acid. So by talking to him about, okay, we can't eat too late, we got to try to eat a little bit sooner, all of that changed, and he came back and his levels just went up. Same thing for another guy who had a bad VO2 max the first time. He went back, did the 4x4, Norwegian 4x4 routine to optimize his VO2 mass, came back and just blew it up again. So it's very interesting and very encouraging to kind of see specific deficits. And then when you do the work, the translation, and that kind of cut across everything I do, really trying to get people to improve function. We are rehab people. It's all about, doesn't matter what your VO2 max and other things, but we still want it to be overall, optimizing overall function for metabolic and immune and everything else. Yeah.
Awesome. As I was going through it, the two things that came to mind, two P words. One was precision, like you mentioned. Like it just, I think a lot of times we have these ideas of health behaviors as very broad things. Like when we get to nutrition, it's like everybody should be eating a certain way. There's like one healthy way to eat. This gives you a little bit more sense of precision for yourself, for the individual, about what you might not be doing well or what your body just naturally needs a little bit more of. And it really can't be general. Like we can get up pretty far with certain rules, but at a certain extent, we need to like kind of figure out, what's best for us. So that precision piece, and then prioritization is the other one where like you see what you should prioritize a little bit more. And a lot of times with fitness, we tend to prioritize what we're already good at, but with health, it oftentimes needs to be the opposite. And that doesn't mean you throw away what you're good at, but it just gives you a sense of like, all right, if I want to balance out my health a little bit, I probably have to do a little bit more of what I don't love and have to have some type of a plan for that. And it always goes through my head that line that you say, like, you can't manage what you don't measure. And I just think that's so like important, because even if you're like really, really into your own fitness and you have good habits, you may not realize what you're missing until you start to measure it. And this gives you a lot of information, and you don't have to necessarily take it all, but that prioritization piece where it's like, oh, I really should focus on this, and this is something I never thought of. And you might consider yourself doing everything right, quote unquote, but then that's where you need a little bit of, okay, let me put a little bit more eggs into this basket.
Absolutely. And that's so important because one of the things that, I always talk about is the adaptation of your whole body. Okay. So if you're doing all the right things and you may not even be doing something as right as you need to, and you're not measuring, your body and your system adapts.
Right.
So you're adapting in a way that it may
Yeah.
not be it's going to be suboptimal. And you kind of feel like, oh, this is the optimal place for me because I go to the gym and I do all of these things all the time. But once you do this test, and then you find this little deficit that you were not aware of, and you correct that, then you go, oh my gosh, look at all this energy I have. And that's kind of what we had with this fighter who just kind of like just took it to a whole different level
Mhm.
because now he just stopped eating late. So really, really super important. And it's just been a very interesting experience. People that come in that I would expect that they would not have a good metabolic profile tend to do. And then when you ask about what are they doing?
Mhm.
Some people are just doing sauna. I mean, I had this lady that I was just like blown away. It's like, really? And that's all she did. She didn't do, a whole lot of, strength training to build muscle, but really had good markers. So there's all these other things also that people do that all of those interventions translate to improving how efficiently your mitochondria is taking using oxygen, and all of that will be, represented in this particular test. Yeah.
Beautiful. And another question I get a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is like, are these new interventions that people hear about on podcasts and in the social media space for health, are they helpful for me? And to me, it's always like it depends, but you're really not going to know unless you're monitoring something, right? You could go based on feel, which is fine. Like I'm all about like if you feel better, do it. But if you really want to have a little bit more information, do you want to invest money? Do you want to invest time in some intervention like a sauna, like cold plunges and things like that? You really want to have something that you're monitoring to see, is it helpful for you? And I think it's a lot of people don't have any metric, any baseline going into changes they're trying to
Yeah.
make. And it makes the changes a lot more difficult to work with because if you're trying to say make change to your weight loss and all you have is the scale, there
Yeah.
could be problems with that. And you can even like actually be losing some health in trying to chase a number on the scale where you're not looking at other numbers that might be, at a detriment at a certain point in time. So anytime there's these sort of things that are promised to make
Mhm.
change, to have some things that you can look at, some data that you can look at pre and post test and see it is actually making a change. Well, now you're more confident in that investment.
Absolutely. So this is something that I will highly recommend. The question of is this something that people should do? Because getting that baseline information on health is super, super important. Okay. Because we live in this body with all these cells, trillions of them, and they're doing their own thing. And they are all shifting and adapting, and you're going through your day. So if you're not really checking, you will not know. And a lot of times it takes, and one thing that I kind of feel like I do and I'm continuing to do is to looking at multiple lenses, because I've had people come in here. We also do body composition, right? And they will do their body composition and they have good skeletal muscle mass. Everything looks good. Visceral fat is down. And then you put them on a bike and stress them a little bit and they don't have a good VO2 max.
Right.
Okay. Or you can have some people who don't have a good body composition and yet they have a great VO2 max. So what is going on here? So it's a really, it's a great thing if you're really serious about your health in this current environment where there's all these interventions that everybody's pushing out. Of course, we know the fundamentals, but really dialing in the fundamentals with data is super, super important. The sleep, the nutrition, the exercise, which PNOE kind of track all of those things. So this is something that I think people need to be aware of. And then it also helps you, like you said, not all these interventions and studies out there actually applies to you in your context or in your situation or in your goals. So really trying to figure out, okay, I'm trying to get here. Maybe I want to build more muscle, or I want to, be able to run a little bit faster, whatever it is. Having a baseline and then doing certain things, like you said, sauna, does that help with my recovery? There's a way for us to tell your recovery capacity, and a lot of times it's sleep. So when I see that people don't recover so well on PNOE, it's a little bit of a sleep issue there. Okay, and then also looking at even breathing patterns. People are more sympathetic tone. So all of that information is helpful to guide where do I need to spend more time in and not get comfortable. Because for me and all of us, we have this default where I go to the gym and all I want to do is lift weight. But, PNOE is telling me, which I know, I definitely know that I don't do the cardio, and now I'm doing it and I'm getting myself there. So it's important to measure. And then it's also important to track the interventions. Are we really making a difference? Because what may work for you may not work for another person. So this is a way for you to get a baseline and try to push through. And then obviously having guidance. It's really important to get a clinician who understands all of these things. You can't just look through one simple thing, but put it all together in your history and help you navigate where you want to get to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the measurement also leads to motivation. And I think it's
Yes.
usually like an underestimation for people until they do it and they go through it. And that also might be one of the reasons that I have a lot of clients they're very resistant to monitoring and measuring things because they have an anxiety towards it, right? It
Yeah.
becomes more real at that point. And that's a real discussion to have and say like, all right, you might not be ready to monitor so many things. And I often have to pull myself back,
Yeah.
like, because I know I like
You like
monitoring
data.
things because it helps me, and you have to know where you're at in your process.
Yeah.
But there's a reality to that it kind of goes both ways. Like if you can get over gradually that anxiety of being able to actually look at the baselines, it becomes very motivating in a way that is actually less daunting than you thought. Because now it's a little bit more of a step-by-step process. It's not you versus somebody else, it's you
Yeah.
versus you. And
Yeah.
you also get a sense of like what you're describing here is like you can't judge a book by its cover when it comes to fitness. And
Yeah.
we should know that if we watch enough sports, right? If you watch the Olympics, like the epitome of what strength is and power
Yeah.
looks very different than the epitome of what long distance endurance looks like, right? We know that we could see these archetypes of different body shapes and types. But like most of us are not at those archetypes. We're somewhere in between. So we
Mhm.
really can't even look at ourselves and know what we're great at, what we're not so good at, what we need to work more on, and what we don't. We can't assume. But I think there is a lot of assuming that goes on just based on looking at an aesthetic. And that I think is
Yeah.
going to get you nowhere.
Absolutely right. The motivation piece, because once you see it, it will validate the habits.
Mm,
Sometimes, people may deny it or get shocked and they go, oh my gosh. So you're right. Sometimes people are afraid of, and even when I tell people, hey, come on in, let's do your VO2 max. Everybody's a little like, oh my gosh, I want to train and get better first before I come in. I was like, that's not the point. The
mm,
point is to get a baseline of where you are. This is you against yourself.
right.
Okay. So you against yourself trying to improve. So this is a great way to do it, and it definitely does motivate you. It helps you dial in habits, and it's right there. And you can't fix that in 3 days. It's not like one
Mm,
of those things where specific biomarkers that we can change because we have you do sauna or we have you do ozone or whatever, where your
mm,
inflammatory markers or plasma is changed, get erased overnight.
right.
VO2 mass is not going to be the case. You got to put
Right.
in the work. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's more precise and it's more meaningful, and but it's you against yourself, and this helps you to get there.
Have you started to prescribe anything differently because of the data that you're getting? Like, are there some things that in your ability to prescribe medicine and other type of supplements that have helped the data that you're seeing with patients? Are you starting to notice that yet?
Absolutely. So, I do peptides. So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I would see is like people that have recovery issues, they don't recover as fast. Then I will give them like, some protocol for recovery, either sauna or some type of red light therapy, something that helps with mitochondria. And then I will also put them on specific peptides that helps with deep delta sleep. And then something that helps, CJC epimoreline is a peptide that helps with recovery, IGF-1. So things that help clean things up. I've also had patients who will put on GLP-1s to improve their metabolic profile because they're not metabolically flexible at all.
Right.
They're not making energy efficiently. So definitely from a physician standpoint, I've been able to use it to guide specific therapies, whether medication, lifestyle, getting people to see nutritionists, getting people to say, hey, we got to get you to focus on protein.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get you to focus more on strength training, or we got to get you to focus more on, endurance training. So whatever it is, this has been really helpful in terms of prescribing all the therapies that we have. And I even have had people where, we may have to do some hormones to try to get them to build some more muscles, because the more muscle you have, actually that also implicates your VO2 max, right? More muscle, more
Yeah.
mitochondria. So all of those nuances are there, and it makes it the very thing we're talking about precise for the person in front of you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is like you mentioned the macronutrients and the
Yeah.
separation there, like proteins, fats, carbs, and everyone's got a different opinion on that. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about, when you want to eat certain foods, why you want to eat certain foods, why you want to eat certain macronutrients. And I remember that being in the report that there you could see
Yeah.
like what your body might need to prioritize a little bit more. Can you speak a little bit about the differences there, about like how the body uses carbohydrates for energy, how it uses fats for energy, and what we do with protein? And I'll add what I tell people, but I just want to get like your take on
Yeah.
how you kind of look at that, because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings there. And I do think it matters to understand how we use those macronutrients.
Absolutely. So um, when it comes to that too, it also becomes like, what are the goals? Okay.
Hmm.
So for somebody who is very active and out there working out a lot more, we want to make sure you get enough carbs to get that in there, use it, and kind of get it going. Okay. For somebody who is trying to lose weight, we want to make sure all of it. I mean, everybody needs protein, but
Hmm.
it becomes precise. Okay, if you're trying to lose weight, we want to get you more protein so that you can get fuller protein so much. So then your body can not have too much glucose, then your body can turn to fatty acids.
Hmm.
We also need fats, and fats is actually a good source of energy. So for somebody who
Right.
is trying to lose weight, the goal becomes, you have a lot of fats around. Let's give you more protein. Let's get your body into a place where it's using fatty acid instead of wanting glucose, because people just feel if they're not metabolically flexible, then they have to try to put in more glucose to try to
Right.
help with navigating all of that. And the issue with protein is definitely we don't want to get into a place where you're using protein as an energy source. Okay, you
Right.
want protein to build. You want fatty acids and you want glucose to help you with the energy production, but you never want to dig into your amino acids for energy production, because that's going after your muscles to break it
Right.
down. So it's very different for each one. But I'm also interested, you've done this longer, and I'm interested in your expertise and your view on how you break this down for people.
But like wait, how you just finished there is sort of like what I've been hearing a lot, and what I wanted to kind of get at is the protein's so important. But protein to me is like it's the structure. You're building the scaffolding over time. So it's different in many ways than eating for energy. So when we're
Yeah.
eating for protein, we're more eating for structure. We're
Yes,
eating
building the
to kind of
biomass.
for
Yeah.
building, and that is so important for weight loss. But it's not as important in the moment for energy. So
Yes.
I will often see people that will come in and they feel like their energy's a little down right before they're going to work out. And the thought is like, I need to eat, I should have had protein right before I came in.
No.
And I don't want to say no, but because like I want you to eat protein throughout the
Yeah.
course of the day, but it's not the quick thing that's going to make a change to your
Absolutely.
energy. And that's oftentimes, especially in this sort of this world where people are eating less to lose weight. And now with the GLP-1s, they might be eating quite a bit less, and I'm all for it. It's just that we have to understand like the macronutrients now work a little bit differently if you're taking in less food overall, if your
Yeah.
hydration might change because of that. So you might need to go down the carbohydrate route in a way that you were really, really afraid to do before when you were at a heavier weight, because that there's a need for that energy that might be a little bit quicker. It also could produce some glycogen if we're
Yeah.
asking the muscle to do a little bit more. And then, to my understanding, there's quite a hydrating piece to the glycogen and the carbohydrates, where a lot of times when you take carbohydrates away, you take water out of the glycogen pretty
Yep.
much. So that's part of the loss of the scale. And if you're losing weight, but you're also not, now having a new relationship with carbohydrates, so to think of it that way, is that it just, you keep doing the same things that you're used to, but your weight's down. That could be a big issue for not feeling like you have energy, you feel lightheaded. And then if you like, protein's going to be good all day long, but it might not be the thing you need in that moment to make you feel
Yep.
better, to give you the energy to keep going. And I think fats are the same way. So it's like you got protein and fats as they are going to be more for your energy in different ways, but protein is more for the structure.
Yep.
And protein is something that's sort of like the long game. You gotta work with it on a regular basis. Most people don't realize like how hard it is to get kind of what you need, and
Mhm.
unless you're measuring it.
Yeah.
So it becomes like a whole lifestyle change in the mind to actually get enough protein. But like the carbohydrates and fats might be a little bit more strategic when it comes to movement, especially if there is weight loss or weight gain that's happening. That's where that could be more manipulated strategically in the moment.
Absolutely. And all of that too, it comes to also timing. So timing of
Right.
nutrients makes a huge difference. So
Right.
when are you going to put the protein in? When are you going to put in the carbohydrates? When are you going to put in the fats?
Yep.
All of that has a huge impact in overall energy. And then one of the things, the very thing you're talking about, people really do need the carbohydrate for energy, because eventually what happens, like I said, you hit a metabolic plateau. Just the body just like, I'm done.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not gonna lose any more weight. I'm not gonna, so they just hit this plateau, and it's likely because they're not even giving enough energy. And then
Hmm.
again, if the cells and your body doesn't have it, it's just going to just adapt in some way that
Right.
it just maintain the status quo. Your
Right.
body is always trying to conserve energy, is always trying to survive, is always trying to keep things cool. So if there's a huge demand and it can't do it, it just downregulate. And how does that translate? Not enough energy, fatigue, brain fog, all of those things. The cells all have all this fate that they may turn into if there's a stress. And
Right.
nutrient sensing and getting the right nutrient to the cell makes a huge difference. So again, this all of this data comes up, and then he also talks about what to do at baseline. So when you're not exercising, and then when you're exercising, which is that's also important to get
Yes.
people to understand that you have to understand nutrient in the context of everyday stuff, and then in the context of when you're working out, because most people don't even do that. People just go through routine and eat the same stuff when you're working out or when you're not working out.
Hmm.
And PNOE also breaks that information down for you. Say, okay, this is how much you should eat when you're working out, and this is how much calories you should eat when you're not working out, which
Right.
is all very helpful. Yeah.
And I think like one of the things that shows up too is like if you are making a change and you're trying to make a change in your life, and one thing changes, say, your body weight changes substantially, other things are probably going to have to change to match
Yeah.
that. And I've gone through like my own anecdote with that is like I really do enjoy fasting from a standpoint of simplicity,
Yeah.
right? And that just if you're busy throughout the course of the day, you don't have to meal plan and things like that, and you could
Taking the
still,
shortcut.
and it is a bit of a shortcut
Yeah.
mentally, and you could, I think, still be quite productive, but it
Yeah.
depends on now if your physical activity changes in some way. I started playing basketball on Wednesday nights, and basketball is a very different endeavor than weightlifting and
Yeah.
doing cardio and stuff that I'm measuring and I'm more controlled with. It's a competition, and now I'm trying to win, and the difference is stark. Like how if I fed myself just a certain amount of calories, and so
Yeah.
I'm finding it's even less about strategic, like get the carbs right beforehand, and I try that, but I just need to eat more that day, right? And just figuring that out, because it's so easy to get into your daily grind of your routine, and then you add something, you don't even realize you need to change something else.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the precision nutrition and just like continuing education on
Yes.
nutrition for the general population, not just people that are in the field, is so valuable, because it tends to be oversimplified, and things really need to adapt because they're going to adapt anyway, and
Yeah.
the adaptation ends up being negative if you're not being flexible with your behavior changes too. But I think
Yeah.
this is where like some of this measurements start to get the wheels turning on, like, oh, okay, like I have to think a little bit differently about that. I was a little too simple in my thought process.
Yeah. And then, the other side of it is also like this data also sometimes it doesn't translate as well. So sometimes they may give you like, okay, you have to eat this much calories or whatever to maintain. And for some people, they can't. It's just
Right.
like too much.
Yeah.
So it's also trying to kind of find that balance of, what your body is doing or what your body may need, but it has adapted in a state that like trying to get to that is not as realistic or not easily achievable. So it's also kind of taking things slow and slowly kind of changing things around and giving things time for it to get to where it need to go to. Because sometimes you may have to do other things, right? Because it's not
Right.
just what's going in; it's all these other hormones and other things that are getting the cells activated to be able to use the energy
Right.
efficiently. So all of those things also have to be dialing: thyroid, insulin, sex
Yep.
hormones, all of those things as well. Yeah.
And at the very least, it sparks a good conversation with your healthcare practitioner, right?
Yes.
I mean that's the stuff that you don't often get to see, because everything is so fast paced. But people do trust their doctors. In my experience, like a lot more than they trust their personal trainer and their physical therapist. But so being able to go
I
to
think people trust their personal
it's
trainers and their physical therapists
some,
more than they trust
yeah,
this
we're
bullshit.
coming from different perspectives. I'll tell you, it's like it's hard to get my family to listen to me. They'll always listen to what their physician tells them, but it just
Yeah.
becomes,
I
like
think it's because they are your family. My family
probably.
don't listen to me either.
So I get you. So it's just that anecdote. But I think it
Yeah.
does. This opens up conversations that you often don't have with your normal family physician. Going in, and you're not often talking about some of these behaviors in this type of depth. And I'm sure from your perspective, you're learning too, right? You're learning as a healthcare practitioner.
Oh my gosh.
So, and that's how I feel. If I take more data for myself, I learn a lot. But then if I'm getting my clients to just monitor a little bit more, I gain so much more insight and how I could help them. So, like it does work both ways, where you don't want to force anything on anyone. You want to make sure that they're ready for it.
Yeah.
But if more information can be taken in, if there's better technology to give more data, well, everybody starts to win little by little. Better conversations are had. It sort of revolutionizes the thought process of what healthcare is. And,
Yeah.
and I think slowly that will start to build, and it's building already. But this type of, having this in a physician's office, to me, is moving in that revolutionary direction.
It's been great. And the very thing you talk about learning, it helps you to learn so much about other things because now you can kind of see what's happening with people's habit, what else is changing, what else needs to. So then, it also, for me as a physician, I'm also looking through different lenses. I'm doing other type of testing. So, for example, if your VO2 mass represent a specific biological age, I can do another test that looks at biological age from methylation type panel, looking at all these third generation biological clocks, and then try to match it up. And then even can also look at some specific genetic predisposition to certain type of things that once you address it, some people are not good at detoxifying, some people are good at creating a lot of energy, some people are have a lot of prone to injury and all of this. And so getting more data actually helps you to be able to kind of solve a particular problem because sometimes you have it and you don't know all of these things and nothing is changing, and a lot of times there's something else that we're missing. So it's been great to teach me to help my patients, and then it also helps me to go find other what else is missing in this picture,
Right.
something doesn't
Right.
make sense, and then we keep moving forward to really get to a place where these things become very precise. Precision medicine, we've been talking about it for a long time, and I think some of these things then makes it easy to put it together as we have more information and get more precise.
Beautiful. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, and I think that's a sign of a good clinician, in my opinion. And it's just like you're continuing to build, you're,
Yes.
and you're also seeing where the holes still are, because there's always going to
Yeah.
be gaps, and that's moving the medicine forward. In my opinion, is that you're always looking for those gaps. You're not trying to get into a routine too much. And I think there's value into initially building habits, building a routine. But if you get caught in your routine, then there's learning that's being left on the table.
Yeah, and it's really hard for me to like create protocols. People will have, oh,
Hmm.
this is a protocol for this is a protocol for that. For me, it's hard because every person have a different story. It's about we know all of these things are helpful. It's the
Hmm.
timing, is the dosage, is the the frequency, is the intensity, is the duration. So all of those things make a difference. So yeah, it becomes really important to understand the person in front of you and then try to
Sure.
tailor what they need at the right time, for the right person. Yeah.
Yeah. And Andrew Huberman loves his protocol, so like that's the world out there. Yeah, that's his book that he's coming out with now called Protocols. But that's, I think, in some ways that is the mass idea. It's simple,
Yeah,
right? Like, to create a protocol, it simplifies a process. I think it's fine to think of it as a guide and a template, but ultimately, like, protocol is at odds with precision, right? So as soon as you
absolutely.
try to protocol something, then it's like you're basically saying, like, anybody can do this, right? All I got to
Yep.
do is see this sheet, and do exactly what's done, and there's no skill to it. There's no management and change, and that can lead to problems. I see, like, if you
Absolutely.
listen to a protocol too well and you don't listen to your body, then there's problems there. But it also can leave a lot on the table, because
Yeah.
you're not realizing, like, how simplistic it is purposely. And your body and your health are usually way more complex than any protocol can be.
It is way more complex, and that's it. It's a system of systems. So one
Hmm.
shift here, and then it's also, protocol that works today may not be a protocol that works for you. There is
Right.
aging. There's all of these
Sure.
changes that are also going on within your
Beautiful.
body, your
Yeah.
environment, your stresses, your workload, other things, having kids. So there's all of these nuances that, needs to be taken into consideration when you're looking at a protocol. And I do get that quite a bit. Patients come to me and they're educated because they listen to Huberman and all of those people. And it's great that these people are
Hmm.
democratizing information, which is really needed
Absolutely.
because
Right.
they're not getting that from their doctors. Right.
Right.
So that information is important. But people need to recognize that, yes, it's a baseline, but if you want to get precise information on what works for you, you may have to take that information, talk to your trainer, talk to other people who understand your picture a lot more,
Right.
right? Because Huberman may not know you, but he understands physiology, he understands all of the science. But really trying to match something that's specific to you has to come from your therapist, your trainer, your physician, or somebody who have a little bit more data for you to be able to put it together. So
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll say about that, I think that's part of the continuing education of the healthcare practitioner is to actually know what the very popular healthcare
yes,
information is out there.
yeah,
So if somebody comes at you with those questions, you should really welcome them and look forward to it and redirect them, understanding
yeah,
you likely know that client better than they even know themselves in some way. And they're just getting this new information, but you can usually expand on it in a more precise way. But the other side of that is like if you're not following that, you're not aware of it, there could be this defensiveness that comes to the question. And I've seen that quite a bit, and I'm sure I've had to fight against it myself, where you just
yeah,
it becomes not helpful then because you're sort of taking away the curiosity of the client, right? I'm glad the
absolutely.
client is learning, and then they come to me with questions that I think that's exactly where I want to be as a healthcare practitioner. I want to be there to help someone that I know and I
Yeah.
have a relationship with as they're getting their own information and trying to find out where I can make it more precise to them.
Absolutely, and the good thing about some of these protocols that are put out is they're all basically a lot of it is lifestyle interventions,
Right.
lifestyle things. Get outside and get some sunlight. That's not going to hurt
Exactly.
you.
Hmm.
Provided you don't have potential risk for cancer or some other things. So being a doctor also, I think we are on this end of first do no harm. So we tend to be so conservative with our ideas and our things that it's all about risk and benefit.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think people like Huberman and the Gopin and all of these other people who are out there really pushing lifestyle science and other things. There's a lot of benefit to that, and you're right. Doctors need to listen. So I do listen to them because
You
my patients
should.
are going to
Yeah.
come and say, "Hey, he said that you should take magnesium for this and this and this and that." But all right, so then I can put it together and say, "Okay, all right, so yeah, you have muscle cramps and something else. Yeah, glycinate is better, but maybe malate is better, right?"
Right.
So, or if there's a sleep issue, then maybe let's do this particular thing. Or maybe you have a constipation, so let's do citrate or let's do oxide. So there's all of these other things that we can get from all of that information that's out there educating people because previous to that, none of that stuff was being pushed out and it becomes you go to a doctor and you talk about those things. They don't have time to talk to you about that except they can give you a prescription. So
Absolutely.
all good stuff. Data is good. Yes.
Data is good. Beautiful. Well, Dr. Christian, another great conversation. Hopefully we'll do it again soon, but I thought this was quite useful. And I got to
Yeah.
get back over there and do another test
PNOE, yes.
I want to do the more advanced version next time and get maybe a little bit more accurate results. But I did learn
Yeah.
a lot from the process, and I love that you have it there. Love the setup. It was I had a great cup of espresso afterwards too, which was
Yeah.
well needed and welcomed. So I appreciate it.
Of
But
course.
we will
Yeah.
talk soon.
Talk soon. Thank you so much for this, Chris. It's always nice connecting. I'm always learning from you. So really appreciate that. And we'll keep this conversation going. And then I think next time I definitely want to know about your experience the second time
Yeah.
and then how you do and maybe we can talk about maybe we can show you if you're open to it. We can show people what that looks like.
Yeah.
Or I can share mine.
I'm
Mine
open
is not
to
that great, but
I'm
we'll see.
I'm an open book. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
So I look forward to it.
Awesome.
All
All
right.
right.
See you next time.
Take care. Yeah.